Welcome to the Hourly Podcast. In today's episode, Bastian, Senior Director of Learning and Culture at Hooters, discusses the brand's transformation to focusing on employee empowerment, particularly with the Hooters Girl role. He highlights the initiatives aimed at enhancing employee experience, the unique culture at Hooters, and the importance of internal mobility. Cole addresses the controversies surrounding the Hooters brand and emphasizes the positive impact of their programs on employee confidence and career development. He shares metrics that demonstrate the success of their initiatives and reflects on the future of Hooters in changing perceptions. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by JoJo, an AI virtual recruiter powered by Sprockets. Designed for the hourly workforce, JoJo works 24/7 to source, screen, and schedule interviews with the best applicants for your business. JoJo helps reduce employee turnover and time spent hiring so you and your team can focus on other important tasks. To learn more, head to sprockets.ai/JoJo.
So how's your day, Cole?
Today's going well. It's been extremely busy in the world of Hooters as we're kind of coming up to the end of the year, looking at what does 2025 look like and how are we going to make an impact. So it's been busy today with those things as well as finishing out the balance of the year, but overall very good. How about you?
Yeah, and I'm good. I've had this interview kind of scheduled on my calendar for a while, just given everything about Hooters and staffing. There's so many different things that we can talk about. And I know the brand's gone through, a recent transformation of its people practices, and you're a big part of that. So how about you kind of start with telling us a little bit about you and your role specific at Hooters?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So I've been with Hooters now for 6 years. I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Culture. So what my team really oversees is all things L&D, traditional, we're bringing a new team member on board and we're going to train them to be successful in their role, to their career journey and the development that we give them beyond, their initial training, as well as we oversee all of our cultural initiatives, which includes, our vision, mission, serve values. We're recently, we've been going through a kind of a refresh and relook at what is our service philosophy, or, what we're calling our guest obsessed experience, and what does that really entail. And so my team is, helping and supporting, we support all of the departments, but specifically in our organization, probably operations more than anyone. And we are really helping to spearhead and lead the charge when it comes to all things guest obsessed or guest experience in our restaurants and how we can really move the needle there. And, about me, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, or just outside of Atlanta. I have my master's in industrial organizational psychology. So kind of a brain nerd and all things. How does the organization work together as individual people coming together as one? And I really have enjoyed my time at Hooters and being able to help strategically and, from an execution perspective, drive the business forward and come out of what we're all experiencing in the restaurant space successfully.
Yeah, and what are some things, and I've read a lot of positive things about the Hooters brand, awards that you guys have won for employment engagement, employee experience. Like, what are some of the things that are leading to that? And, what have you been focused on since starting 6 years ago of kind of changing the way people view the Hooters employee experience?
Yeah, there's been a variety of things, and I certainly can't take credit for all of them. It's been a collective team effort. My former supervisor or boss, for our chief people officer, her name was Cheryl Kish. She kind of spearheaded a lot of those, which most notably is probably our I Am initiative, which is all things for our Hooters Girl, knowing, that that's the essence of our brand, and over half of our team member population are young females. And how does our brand provide them with agency and the ability to build their skills and their confidence and all the things necessary while they're at Hooters to either leverage it for their time within the brand, or they can leverage it for their time beyond the brand. And so that was really her large initiative. And she's now since gone on to focus on her consulting business, but she started as a Hooters Girl many decades ago. And hopefully Cheryl doesn't, she'll forgive me for saying that. I want to age her, but she's been a huge mentor of mine and a big part of the organization. And then, what we've really done is taken that kind of overall philosophy and focus on from a perspective of not just the Hooters girls, but our entire company, specifically within the hourly team member population. How can we develop their skills so that they can be successful with us, or that they can be successful if they choose to go elsewhere? We obviously want to keep them, within our company. We want the talented individuals to stay with us long term, but we also aren't in the business of holding people back. And so if their full potential can be realized elsewhere, we want to still be a part of their history, knowing that, they're going to move on to go to another organization. What have we done to be a part of their story? And so all of that is really culminated from, we 3 years ago now almost launched a new program that really revolutionized and transformed how we at Hooters look at learning, so that it's not a check the box, let's move through this as quickly as possible, but it's really about what are the skills someone needs, how do we train them to be effective in those skills, how do we then know that they've successfully reached whatever level it is in that skill that we want them to be in, and then ultimately how do we measure that so that we know that they have actually accomplished that skill level. And so you were talking about how has our organization really achieved some of the awards that we have in the past few years. And it's a really dedicated focus on that. And it sounds probably more complex hearing it than it is in actual practice, because we're very focused on how can we ensure that this particular program and that our philosophy from a learning perspective really is easy for the operators and the folks in the restaurants to execute, knowing that, it translates to all of our team members. It can't just be to one level or another. And then, additionally, we have a strong emphasis and focus on people. And so if you talk to our CEO, Sal Malili, he'll tell you that we are in the people business. We're not in the restaurant or wing business or beer business or any of those. We are truly in the people business. And we fully believe, from an entire leadership perspective, that is what makes us different. When you strip away everything that makes us the same as all of our competitors, we're really only left with the people that work at our organization, and that being the unique identifier for Hooters, outside, of course, of our iconic Hooters girl role that makes us who we are. And so we have a huge emphasis on how can we be obsessed about them. So, we talk about being guest obsessed and focusing on how does our external guest really engage with us and with our team members. But there first has to be a layer to look at, well, how do we take care of the people who do work for us? And so you just mentioned a lot of the things that we have done. And then, of course, there's tons of other things that we do, from tuition reimbursement so that our team members, can choose to go and get their education. And we will reimburse them up to a certain dollar amount 3 times a year in the semester, offering a full benefits package, flexible scheduling. And I would say for the Hooters girl, the benefit that probably most don't know about is that she comes to Hooters and she leaves a sister, right? And she's a sister within this sisterhood, and they talk about it all the time. It's, a unique role that not everyone can occupy, but what she learns and the support that she receives from those that are in the same type of position is long and everlasting throughout her career. And you can see that in some of the videos we've done around this I Am initiative, and really how we as, an organization have created the space for that to be possible.
Yeah. And, of course, being part of the hourly podcast and hourly project, we're dealing with a wide variety of hiring processes and retention strategies across all different types of verticals, businesses, industries, et cetera, et cetera. And, you touched on the Hooter girl a few times already, of course. And it's such a unique thing about Hooters is that. And you speak about it so romantically, right? Like, you come an employee, become a sisterhood, all of these programs to empower them. And I was looking at the website, and there's a lot of things about building confidence, right? Yet in public market, as you know, Hooters has been the target of a lot of claims, lawsuits, and kind of a lightning rod of controversy over the Hooter girl. Why do you think that is? And, what's kind of your response to people that say that it is in fact degrading, it is demeaning, and that the Hooter girl should not exist? Curious.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it is one that we get oftentimes, and obviously want to handle the response very delicately, because we are very proud of the fact that we have the Hooters girl role and that we do create this space for her to be empowered. And the simple answer to the question is, has then when those types of questions come up, the response that I will give is, when was the last time you visited one of our restaurants? And 9 times out of 10, they haven't been at all, in their lifetime, or it's been a really long time. And so the formation of the belief system that they have, is somewhat predicated on things that aren't actual reality. And so when you go and you talk to our Hooters girls and you talk to the women who occupy that role, they are the biggest advocates against everything that you just talked about, it being, degrading or whatever the, adjective is that you want to put in there. They will tell you that it's not, that it was a platform they chose, right? They had agency to come and occupy that role. And what's interesting is, anecdotally, after having many conversations with hundreds of Hooters girls over the years, the one skill outside of a variety, because there's tons of them, that they gain while they're working at our organization is confidence. They didn't have it when they came into our company, and they leave being able to say that they are confident in who they are and what they bring to the table. And so I think when, people have, there's going to be preconceived notions. And the thing that we as an organization, we realize we're probably not for everybody, and we're okay with not being for everybody. However, we want you to give us a try the first time, because the experience that you're going to get and what you're going to see unfold in front of you is highly different than what, Hollywood or other things have depicted our organization as over the years. And then if you start to really peel the layers back and ask the Hooters girl that's, waiting on you, what is it that makes you want to be a Hooters girl? The story she's going to tell you is going to compel you to.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, maybe we'll have to have a Hooters girl on the podcast to hear about their experience. We're doing general managers all the time, recent college students that are looking for hourly work. So that'd be a great subject. But, one thing that struck me as I was looking through the material was the amount of people on your extended team, not just in the hourly workforce, that were one-time Hooters girls. So talk to me a little bit about, if you're an hourly worker, you want to get involved in brands, why should they pick yours over other brands? And what programs have you seen be successful within the network?
Yeah, well, we have a unique experience at Hooters. Hooters culture is very unique. And I know probably every organization I've worked at, many previous to Hooters, they say that. But right. Hooters offers a unique experience because of the Hooters girl. And I say this oftentimes because of that kind of preconceived notion that's out there. What we have done within the L&D space specifically is we are so highly intentional on how we develop our people and the programs that we put in place, which is also part of the reason we've won these awards. But the reason we've done it isn't because of the award. It's because we want to prove the naysayers wrong. That at Hooters, we have a robust, world-class learning experience, a world-class, robust development experience. And so we call it Career Journey at our organization, which is different perhaps than others. Some might call it, career path or roadmap or, whatever. We chose Career Journey for a very specific reason, because there are many different verticals that one can go on, or many different lateral movements based off what they might want to do in their career. It's not one predetermined pathway or roadmap. It's a journey that they get to choose where they want to go. And you see that in our hourly population. We've got a majority of the folks that are in our marketing team, they were former Hooters girls at one time in their career. And they call it talent agility now, where one is able to really transition from a role that's not necessarily, I'm a hourly team member in what we would call our operations team. I've kind of gone cattywampus, right? I've taken a diagonal approach and I've gone over to the marketing team. Or I have 2 team members on my team, that Becky Moore and Caroline Perry. They were both former Hooters girls, and they grew up in the operations department, but then they've made a successful transition over to the L&D department and have become L&D professionals. And so I think that is what we're really proud of, is that we provide that platform through Career Journey. And Career Journey is a very robust program, and it's constantly being updated. And we still have some pieces that we're continuing to build out, but it's based on there are 4 key career milestones within each of our individual roles, careers: newly promoted, in place, high potential, and ready now. Then we have, of course, our leadership competencies, and they are taught and developed within each of those competencies throughout each career milestone. And then those competencies or those skills are preparing them, yes, for the next step and kind of that vertical movement, but also translate beyond that, which allows for the talent to be very agile and move into different areas. And, it's a very unique experience because our Hooters girls specifically, but even in our kitchen, we've had some talent mobility, a lot of upward growth. In fact, our CEO was a former dishwasher for us many, many, many years ago. Our COO, he was an MIT for us at one time. But when you look at the Hooters girl population, they get to experience, if they choose to, a lot of unique things where they get to be a part of our social media programs. They get to be a part of advertising programs, pageant, calendar, marketing promotions, all kinds of things that one might think is, looking specifically at the beauty of the Hooters girl. But in reality, it's teaching a tremendous amount of valuable skills on how do you manage social media? How do you market yourself through that campaign? What does it look like to put on large events? How do you manage that experience? And so there's a variety of skills that are happening simply from just the experience that they have in participating in those events.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And we're seeing that across a lot of different brands, of course, is the more you invest in your people, the better it is, not only for the world, but also it is for business, right? Because they stay longer, they're more engaged, you have less recruiting costs in the future because you can pull from within. Cole, any stats you might have around, since you've deployed this sort of programming, kind of the results, whether that's turnover or profits, anything that you'd be willing or are able to share on that front?
Yeah, so I can share, and it was actually just recently published as a part of our, winning of the OnCon Icon Top 10 L&D Team Award. We within our MIT program, we can boast an 85 Net Promoter Score, which for those who are familiar with NPS, that's fairly difficult to do in any program, and we're very proud of it. For our Hooters girl and our kitchen program, it's on average about 75, which is still in a world-class category. So we're very proud of that Net Promoter Score. The MIT program specifically, it has in the first 2 years of its inception, each year consecutively or consistently, it was a 15% reduction in MIT or manager turnover, which was a significant save for us as an organization. And then specifically when you look at the skill level of our team members and what they are able to do, we have, and this isn't necessarily attributed to the program because these stats were in existence prior to, but we have 60% of our operations leadership were promoted from within, with anywhere from around 40 to 50% of them being female. And I think that for those who are, your listeners, when you look at the restaurant industry as a whole, predominantly in operations leadership are male figures. And because of our brand and who we are and our focus and emphasis on the Hooters girl being able to grow in her career, we're able to say that we're almost, we're not predominantly male in our leadership operations, that we are almost half and half, which I think is significant, especially knowing the organization at Hooters is.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to share with us? As I reviewed the site, had conversations with members of our team that have worked with Hooters. There was this sense of Hooters is misunderstood from a staffing perspective, right? And when I talk with you and think about the team and programs, I could see that absolutely being the case, right? Where on the surface you see the Hooter girl and you think one thing, but then you take it like one step further and you start to learn about the processes and people that are really working kind of counter to that thought. Like from your perspective, do you think it will ever change the criticism, or do you feel like it's just part of doing business and part of being at Hooters?
I've never really thought of it. I would imagine if I had my crystal ball, that it's probably always going to be there. I mean, the name itself alone, elicits, some, people might laugh. I was on a panel discussion with the Chief Learning Officer group a couple weeks ago, and I said the name and a couple people chuckled, right? But we also know we're tongue in cheek at Hooters. I mean, we don't deny that, and we don't shy away from it. In fact, we're really proud of it. And so I think that what will happen is that over time, it will probably become less of the narrative, because the stories that we're beginning to tell really tell a powerful story. And, Hooters as an organization is more than what others from the outside might see us as. There is, if you really take a moment and you say, okay, when you look at any organization, right, we have the Hooters girl, that's a role, right? Very similar to Disney. So think of Disney and you've got all the different Disney princesses, right? That role, that the Cinderella or Mulan or, whatever, those roles or those characters is very similar to what we say the Hooters girl is. The Hooters girl is a role, and the people who occupy the role are cast into that role. And they put on their costume and they put on, they bring their unique self into our organization, and they go out and they share that uniqueness with the guests that come into our restaurants. But it's all within that framework. And so if you take a moment and you say, okay, well, let's put aside the role and let's look at the females and then the operators in the restaurant, and you look at the people who work there, they are just as important, and they have so much to offer this country, this organization, the industry as a whole. They are extremely, extremely talented. And so I think if people can take the time to really say, and that's in anything, it just isn't for Hooters, really it's all of us, because there's always kind of a facade, right? AJ, you put on a facade. I also have, that's who we present. And it might be slightly different depending on what room we're going to be in. I think, more authenticity is probably coming up in today's age than it was many years ago. But there is somewhat of a facade that we are presenting when we're working with different groups of people. But if you take a moment and you ask questions and you listen and you truly take that time to understand who they are, you're going to learn things that you didn't even know were a part of who that human being is. And then you start to say, okay, and when the concept or the context of Hooters, oh my gosh, I never really understood it. If you can get past what you might see, if that's something that might, elicit whatever feelings it does, if you can get past that and see, look at what this organization is doing for the people who work there and for what those people go on to do in their careers later on, I think it would quell a lot of the notion. But I'm also not naive enough to believe that it's probably going to eliminate entirely. But the good thing is we have, 4,000 in corporate, and then, make that with franchise, probably another 4,000 beyond that. And then 500,000 alumni in the Hooters girl role that, they're going to be the biggest defenders of the brand because they chose to work here. This gave them their start. It propelled them to where they want to go in the future of their career. And so, I think we just sit back and we were to ask ourselves, who is the person that occupies the role versus just looking at the role? I think it would really change a lot of how we look at, everyone, but specifically within Hooters.
Got it. No, it's clearly very passionate about it, which I love, and a lot of data and diligence kind of to back it up as well. So, love.
One of the things, AJ, is like I said, we have to, at Hooters, we have to be more intentional because of the preconceived notions that exist. And so I think I always say we're kind of the untold story of what it means to be a success around hourly team member development and female empowerment.
Love it. Well, hopefully this was a good start of telling that story is here on the podcast. And I'm sure you'll continue to tell it with a lot of different successes. And maybe we'll have to do a part 2, part 3, part 4. But that is all the time we have from right now. Yep. But I ask every single person who joins the podcast the very same last question. You might know it already, but it's what was your first hourly job? And were you fired from that job, or did you leave gracefully?
Well, so my first hourly job, I worked at KFC Long John Silver's in their, kitchen. I really wasn't supposed to be in the kitchen, but I was on the drive-through and I was in the on the front counter, customer service. As you can tell, I love to chit chat, so they certainly used me for that role. And I was recruited out of that job actually, because at the time I wasn't really interested in continuing in quick serve, but I had applied at Walmart and I was in a small town, and for some reason I didn't, no one called me back for an interview. Well, one of the assistant managers happened to come through, recognize my name, see how well I did. And then the next day I was called and offered a job at Walmart. And, Walmart retail, hospitality, very similar in nature.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of where I got my start.
Very cool. And if somebody wants to learn more about you or your work or the brand, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, reach out on LinkedIn. My name is Cole Bastian, or you might see it as Cole Plumber Bastian, as I was recently married. and reach out, because I'd love to share, our successes, learn from others. And then, of course, if there's questions about the brand, obviously I'm very passionate about it and would be happy to answer any of those questions that might come up.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, AJ. This has been fun.